or let's start with confederation. Okay, let's look up confederation. 80. Let's look up confederation and see what the dictionary says about confederation. Here's a definition. Confederation, the act of forming into or becoming part of a confederacy. The state of being confederated, a group of confederations or a group of confederates, especially a state or nations, united for a common purpose, a league. Confederation, the union of the British North American colonies of New Boston, Nova Scotia, and the province of Canada, brought about July 1, 1868, under the name of Dominion of Canada. Keep in mind, federal union of all Canadian provinces and territories. Confederation. The Confederation history, United States, the original 13 states of the United States of America, constituted under the Articles of Confederation and superseded by the more formidable union established in 1789, which was the Constitution of the United States. The Federation of Canada, formed with 4 original provinces in 1861, since joined by 8 more. Are you getting the idea? In order for us to unite, first of all, we have to declare who we are as individuals. And then as an individual, then you make your mind up, is there a problem out there that is adverse to you, such as the political machine of Detroit is adverse to you as an individual. Then you say, okay, is there anyone else that feel the way I feel about this? I would suggest that you would start with your own family or your closest friends and relatives. And I would put it different, relatives and friends. Because those are the only ones that you really can talk to, believe in, trust in, and be happy to do business with, because you know them. Your family would be your first government, your first state, your first unification would be in your family. Where do you go from there? Now you create articles of your adversity. Articles of adversity. Once you realize what you are up against, you got it in writing. All of the persons in your confederation, all of these Confederates, family, believe in the articles that the group of you put together that you are up against. Those that do not need to step away right away. There's nothing compulsory about joining a confederation. You don't have to join. Especially today, back in the day, you may have, back in 1800s, you may have, or get murdered because they couldn't trust you. But today, there's laws against that type of thing. And since they understand unification, all they have to do is look, listen, and search for unifications, because they know they're going to have a problem whenever you unite. One of the problems that happened back in the 60s, You had the Black Panthers. You had SNCC. You had CORE. And then you had the Weathermen going into the white groups. You had a New Africa. You had several different groups, but there was never any articles set up so that the 5 groups could unite. So what happened? The government, realizing what they saw, began to attack each group to divide them, to stay apart, so that they would never unite. The major problem that the United States had in forming this so-called United States of America were the confederations. And 2 of the major confederations that they never did defeat was the Iroquois Confederation and the Powhatan Confederation. They fought each other, but never did they fight United States until United States, realizing from history how to deal with it. Once the war was over between Powhatan and the Iroquois, the losers were Powhatan. United States went to the losers and told them, we'll support you to fight and unite us and go after them. Well, since the knowledge was not there to set up articles between the Powhatan and the United States manipulated, circumvented the entire process, labeled it in revisional history. Notice the word I used. Revisional history, worded it the Civil War that was fought after the major war between the Confederate Iroquois and the Confederate Powhatan. These are historical events that, since you have no idea what happened in the past, and Lord help you, you don't care, how do you expect to move forward in the future? Because surely you're going to make the same mistakes. You don't have a choice. But they have convinced you, the system, the incorporations, the Boules, the niggers on top, have convinced you that certain things need not be discussed. It is politically incorrect to discuss certain topics, certain subjects. Slavery was number 1. Freedom, number 2. Number 2, nationality. You don't want to talk about slavery. You don't want to talk about nationality. And you surely don't want to talk about freedom. None of you have any idea what that is. Now, you can read a book today that's been, revisualized. See, when you do something and you revisit an issue, once you put it in writing, you put it in your own words to coincide with the time that you're in so people can understand it. See, when you read books or read history, you need to read books that were written during the time that you are exploring. Not 2011 is going to talk about the Civil War. What the hell do they know? Or they did research. How do you know that? And if they did do research, they took out of research what they wanted to take out of research so that the book would sell. And yes, I know everybody jumps on me, Ron, you don't believe in nothing. I don't. It's a sin to believe, in my opinion. Why not know? If you know, you don't need to believe. It's better to know than to believe, because in belief, there's room for discrepancies. There's room for manipulation. There's room to screw you around and have you going left when you should be going right. That's why religion, as they teach it, because they'll even add the word faith to belief. Now, that's really giving your life to the devil. Not only are they asking you to believe in something that you've never seen, they're telling you to have faith that your belief is true. Good God. And I mean, it's embedded in Christianity. That's why I hate Christianity and I hate preachers. Because the preachers know better. They only use it for their own gain. And then they'll sprinkle it with Jesus and go into the by and by. Every one of them. Call me and tell me about one that's better than the other one. Because they all come from the same doctrine. Die, go up there, and live happily ever after. They don't know it. They don't want to die. You had one of the biggest preachers in the United States by the Europeans, Billy Graham. A couple more of them old punks. They on their deathbed trying to get a heart transplant. Why didn't they go on up there and see the big man? Why did they go to the by and by? Struggling, trying to stay alive. Put them on life machines and all that kind of stuff. And y'all sit there and listen and look at this shit. And then tell me I'm crazy because I don't believe in that bullshit. Well, I'll be crazy. And wherever I got to go later, I'll be there. And I know every one of y'all going to be right where I am. There's a play on words, a play on your mind. I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist. I'm not one of them heavyweights. But I know when somebody's putting trickology on me, I don't need to go to college to learn that. And I can be objective and see it as I'm looking at you today, or you looking at me today. It's difficult to you to argue or to discuss any situation this serious subjectively, because first thing you're going to use is the egotistical I. I'm not that way. Or my preacher ain't like that. Bullshit. So I start backpedaling out of them conversations. If you don't want to come away from the subjective I can't, there's no need to continue the conversation, because I can't argue with your mind and soul, because you're going to change it every time I tap it. I had a discussion the other morning at breakfast with a couple of gentlemen. And I called, I don't know who I did, but I used the word nigger. And I love to use nigger today. I went a period when I never used it. Then I went through a period when I did use it, going into the 60s. And then I decided not to use it. But today, I love using it, because I've studied and learned something from it. And I can explain it real quick. I think I should. Any definition you find of nigger is a buffoon. We can round it up and call them a buffoon. We can also add the fact that they are in a comatose state of mind. They're really dead. And some of the activity that they do is beyond belief. And I'm still talking about the nigger. Okay? Well, in order for this system that you call United States of America, they have to create, maintain, and protect ignorant blacks. They have to, because they don't want them to learn the truth, which will turn them into Moors, turn them into a nationality or ask questions as to who they are. So they flourish on the fact, the system flourishes on the fact to create niggers. And then they have the audacity to put these individuals on different scales. So you got one that's got a PhD, one that's got a high school, a college bachelor degree, one that's got a high school degree, one that come out of grade school. All of them are niggers. All of them are niggers. Why? Because they didn't teach them nothing. The only programs were set up to make them better niggers. So you take a PhD, okay? Take one. So he knows about sociology systems. He knows about communities and neighborhoods and people, sociologists. Good. He's black, or so-called. You take a European that is in the same boat. He will take his education, go to his community, and raise the knowledge of the community to be a better community. The nigger will come back to the community and pound it into their heads to be like someone else in order to get along. Don't look at me like I'm crazy. We got more PhDs. We got more PhDs and bachelor's and master's degrees than the average race of people. And we are still in a state of nothingness. You know what I'm saying? I tell you what I'm going to do. We should be on the radio, on that blog radio. Let's take a quick. Let me get the engineer out here. Wally B. Wally B. Let's take a quick break to make sure this radio and blog and all that's on. I'm getting all kind of phone calls, and I want to see what the deal is. Got the blog on and everything? So just give me a second. Turn that music on for a minute. So if you have to leave the website, you can always call up on the telephone and get the information on the phone. Telephone number, area code 718-506-1864. 718-506-1864. One more time. They say do it 3 times. 718-506-1864. Okay, we are wrestling today with unity. How can we unite? How can we move as a unit in our community to set up a defense against our enemies? And I want you to know that I am sold on the fact that our enemies are not Europeans per se. The Europeans are playing a hell of a role, and I really can't blame them for playing the role because they're benefiting. What would I call them? The corporate heads. Let me do it that way. The upper echelon of the white communities all benefit from the ignorant stupidity of the black communities. And as long as they don't see any coalition of unity, any talk about unifying, they can go home at night. Let the police do the work. Now, I fault all of these educated ones because if they're not trained as agents to continue the decisiveness of the black communities, then they are placed in positions to lead us in areas of no return, such as that jackleg-ass preacher. I can't give him any other title than a jackleg-ass preacher. He could change overnight. He was set up to do a better job. Now, put that in your pipe and smoke it. The only reason that the preachers get a free ride in our community is because it was set up that way when they passed the 13th Amendment. Yes, when they passed the 13th Amendment, they said, "Now let's evaluate that, and let's evaluate it exactly the way it was given to us." Okay, let's start out with the quote unquote slave. 13th Amendment, from what they gave us to learn, to teach us, was slavery was outlawed and involuntary servitude would not be tolerated. And the United States Congress had permission to set up rules, regulations, and laws to stop it. Does everybody agree? All right. So let's say that you, my audience today, were born in slavery. And let's go to Hollywood. Old Black Joe picking cotton, dragging that cotton bag. Mama out there every day from sun up to sundown. Daddy doing all the hard work that needs to be done, plus picking cotton and going through the changes. And here you were born into this madness. So your daddy is a slave, your mama's a slave, so the baby's a slave. The Europeans, as they show you in Hollywood, was very evil, especially with the field Negro. And that's what I'm talking about, that field Negro. If he tried to escape, he was either caught and brought back or killed out in the no man's land. You don't know where he's going. The odds of a slave escaping was anywhere from 100 to 1 to 1,000,000 to 1. And if you go to the movie Butler, you really have to be insane to believe he's just going to walk off the plantation, go north, and start working for the president. Whoever heard of such shit? And then take one of them butcher knives and stab that president in the neck. Woo! Help me, somebody. So here we are. We are that slave in the field, surrounded by slaves. All we do 24/7 is pick cotton. No, 24/6. Because they say they used to let us off on Sunday to go to church and let that preacher give us the by and by bullshit. Okay? Now, here comes the President Lincoln, who said, I'm getting an echo all of a sudden when I said President Lincoln. Hello. No more. Boy. So here comes Lincoln saying all of a sudden, all the slaves are free. Now, let's analyze that. All mama and daddy, they were born in slavery. So all they know is picking cotton and slavery and hard work. You don't know shit because you can't even read. You had to learn this here and that there from your mama and your papa. Here's the owner of the plantation that was a millionaire on Friday, freed the slaves on Sunday or Saturday, let them pray on Sunday. Monday, he's on a poor farm. How can that be? And somebody's not angry and upset? Want me to take you through it again, or did you get it? If he's going to turn the slaves free with Emancipation Proclamation, who's going to care for the slaves, reimburse the slave owners, help the slaves to get on their feet, find them a place to live, find them, let them go somewhere to eat, all that kind of stuff. And all y'all do is sit back looking at Lincoln is good for us? When Lincoln did the Emancipation Proclamation, he created one of the greatest monsters that ever could be on this land. Everybody hated him, except the mulattoes and the upper class Europeans in the North. But they were hoodwinked also because they didn't realize by passing all those rules, Lincoln used them on both sides of the Mason-Dixie. Because I don't even want to go back into the Labor Code. And he established through his own rules, because because the government collapsed. His history says 1861. That's why the war broke out. So if the war broke out in 1861, how is he going to sign the Emancipation Proclamation and sign the Labor Code that he's going to do this and do that when there was no government to give him permission to do it? So what was he during that period of time? A dictator. And it's never been voted on. The Emancipation Proclamation has never been passed by Congress, nor has the Labor Code ever been passed by Congress. And all of y'all just sit around and say, well, Lincoln is the best thing, and love Lincoln's birthday, and I love Lincoln, and then Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights. All that trash. No wonder you're in slavery today. And you're going to be in slavery tomorrow. I told you I had breakfast with this college graduate. He's going to chastise me on my conversation. I said, well, how can you do that when you're doing nothing? You're saying to me, you want to see what happens to me before you make a move. If that ain't nigger talk, what else could it be? I'm going to wait. I ain't going to do nothing but sit here, watch you. And if you make it, and then I know I can try it, and I'm going to make it. There's no unity there. We had a common enemy then and now. We got to analyze. We got to think. We got to study. Listen. Oof. We have documents today. And remember now how I told you about how you read, how I read and do my research. I don't take one setting or one lookup, one dictionary to deal with it. Once my mind is made up on what I think it should be, I challenge every research that I do to make my mind a lie. I do it in reverse. It's like if you come to me and say that you are free. I'm not going to jump out there and act like I'm free. I'm going to start searching for rules that tell me that I'm not free. Notice how I'll educate myself. And then it will be put on my mind that I never was a slave. Everything that's happened to us was done on a voluntary basis. Now, I know they use fear. I know they use Ku Klux Klan. I know they use laws. But we confirmed, we consented to the rules. They would make examples of us, but most of us, 85% of us, did it because we didn't want to be a part of the bullshit that was coming down on those other 15%, which is understandable. But if you had united and shut the entire plantation down and maybe got away at night to get another plantation to go down, because we all had the same enemy. But that was difficult because a plantation would buy slaves from different parts of the world. And they would buy them on the basis of color. Your neighbor, you don't know who your neighbor is. You can call him whatever you want. Negro, Moor, you can call him a Moor. Negro, Indian, Chinese, whatever. You have no idea because you never talked to him about his ancestors. And as I've said 1,000 times, anytime you have lived or were brought up in a culture, that culture never changes with time. I am still suffering from some of the comments and statements that were made to me when I was 4 and 5 years old, because I was made to believe it by my parents. I challenge them every day, but they don't come up all the time. Culture puts you in a certain predicament. I recall when I was in the military, I dropped out of high school. When I was in the military, I got 3 PhDs. With those PhDs, I'm not going to go into it. With those PhDs, those GEDs, I'm sorry, PhD. I had 3 GEDs. And with that, I went to college in University of Hawaii. I did 1 year. And then I transferred all of my credits because I was getting out of service to Illinois. But I had no idea what to do when I got home. I had no counseling, no teachers. It was in the summertime. I'm waiting on somebody to call me or write a letter to me that I would be accepted, show up Monday morning with a pencil and paper and go to college. Never got it. So I drove down there. Nobody could give me any answers. I wonder how many people suffered from what I did. I was ignorant, had no idea what to do. They had my grades. They had already told me that I was accepted in the school. But by me going down there in the summertime, nobody had the keys to these records, and then there was no one to tell me what to do or what not to do. I went everywhere. Finally, they took me to the football coach's home. I can't remember if it was on campus or off campus, but I went to his house. All he wanted to know was how much I weighed and how fast I could run the 100. I didn't even know what to say. I'm not a track. I wasn't there for that. Well, bottom line, I left, went back to my hometown. I waited as long as I could. I had an opportunity to come to Detroit. I said, I'll go up there and wait. Mama, if you hear something or get a letter, call me. And that was I'm coming out of July, August. Late September, I got a letter at home for me to come down to school. But by that time, I was working at Dodge, Maine, making more money than I've ever. What was I making? $89, $90 a week. I ain't never seen that kind of money. And from there, in 1964, I've been here ever since. So all I'm saying is, it's a sin to be ignorant. Believe me. So we need help in order to educate ourselves. And this is where the ministers come in. Now notice how I said that with emphasis. Ministers. I never mentioned religion. I never mentioned Christians and none of that bullshit. I said ministers of education, ministers of communication, ministers of war, for example. A minister can have gobs of titles, and one of them can be religion. Better yet, could be spiritual, because you get hung up in religion, you got a problem. But since we are ignorant, don't read, don't care to read, nobody's ever talked to you the way I'm talking to you, with your dumb ass. Yeah, dumb ass. So as a result, what happens? You don't know. And don't think, because I can run my mouth and talk this madness that I know everything. I don't know shit. I got so much more to learn. I hope there's got to be another 100 years in my life in order for me to get where I want to get. That's for damn sure. And I'm trying hard to maintain that. Another 100 years. That'll make me 175. And I probably still won't know what I should know. But I'm working on it every day. But we got children born in this world today in the black community, have no idea why they was even born, what they doing, get hung up in them cartoons on television that have those blind, what they call them, hidden secrets in the cartoons, training their minds and body on the religious aspect of Jesus and the like. This is not a secret. We should have a minister of information to be telling all of these families at? And what's a better place to do it is in a building where you meet, or in your home. Let's go back to the first church, your home. I'm telling you, we got some thinking to do. And we need to work on it. Because you're living in a house with people that hate you because of your thoughts. Don't tell me that I know I'm right. Because your house is basically a Christian home. And when you start searching for who you are, you get away from Christianity. And don't lie to me and say you don't. And the further you get away, the more they despise you. Don't you know the system knows that? Don't you know that they will support that Christian concept in order to isolate you? Why do you think? Well, I'll just say it. The Bible calls your wife a helpmeet. I guess some of y'all know that. Why do you think they would say that? A helpmeet. She's got to be in your corner. But due to this television, movies, some of these nightclubs that promote this sex, dirty sex, let's call it dirty sex. Most of you males lead with your Johnson. You have no idea why you're in love with her other than you like to go to bed with her. That's it. You didn't care if she spoke pig Latin, as long as you can get in bed with her. And I guess in this system we all suffer, but you got to come out of it sooner or later. You can't ask to be free and your mind is all crowded with all this trash that's going on. And you're not trying to get out of it? You're not trying to wake up and smell the coffee? Baby, you got to do better. You really have to do better. You really need to study. I read in a book a long time ago by Claude Anderson, I think it was Claude Anderson, 100 Best Kept Secrets. And I can't remember how it was worded, but one of the secrets was slavery as we know it was started and created by a black man. In my recent research, I ran up on it. I really did. I ran up on it. And I looked at it, and I looked at it, I thought about it. And it's true. But one thing that I didn't know when I read it, because I was upset when I read it, and embarrassed, and shameful. But what I didn't realize then, and I'm going to read it for you now, but I'm going to tell you how you need to deal with this. That is, during the time of this action, race and racism was not a major factor in life. Racism and white supremacy as we know it today. Now, we know it was here because the Pope signed those racist bulls as far back as 1600. So I'm not trying to save nobody's ass. I'm just saying to you that in certain parts of the world, white supremacy did not exist, especially in the Americas as it does today. And they had to work themselves into it. Now, we know that white supremacists, I'll say white supremacists and racists were here. But I'm saying they were not as prevalent and as open as they are today, especially coming out of the 1800s and 1900s. some of the shit that they was doing to people of color. Here's an interesting fact of the case is when Anthony Johnson himself was a Negro. He was one of the original 20 Negroes. See, they still calling them Negroes back in 1600. He was one of the original 20 Negroes who landed in 1619 and had earned his freedom in 1623. So we're talking about a 4-year contract he signed with someone to come to the Americas and work off the contract and become a free man. Talking about 1623. And acquired some acreage in a place called Accomack. I don't know where that is. He imported some servants of his own and established a community of free Negroes. He was free. He worked it off. So there were other Negroes who had worked it off or who were already here or had the money to come here to get into the New World. Blacks as well as whites practiced slavery. Blacks and whites both were enslaved as well. Indentured servants was a major method of people obtaining transportation to the colonies from Europe. They could sign contracts in Europe and take out of their wages the fee to come over. So if you were a rich European or rich whatever they had over there, let's say European, you could rent a ship, charge any fee you wanted, sign up as many slaves as you could get on the ship, have them sign up in contracts, and in so doing, they would come, work, pay you back, and then you would help them get land and make deals with them so that they become free and prosper themselves. In 1650, there were only 300 Negroes in Virginia, about 1% of an estimated 30,000 population. They were not slaves any more than were the approximate 4,000 white indentured servants working out their loans for passage money to Virginia, and who were granted, listen to this, who were granted 50 acres each when they were freed from the indenture, so they could raise their own tobacco. Africans were brought by northern slave traders to be used in northern industries long before antebellum South or the Confederacy ever existed. Before they set up this antebellum, and I would say antebellum was from the years 1789 to 1865 was antebellum. From 1865 to 1899, post antebellum. And the purpose of antebellum was to create not only a slave market, but a nation of white supremacists through racism. And I can see today why that was a need for that, because they couldn't tell who was white and who was right. The only thing they really knew was the lily white peckerwood and the black, quote-unquote, African. But there were thousands and thousands and thousands of of shades between the two. And those shades vary from almost white to almost black. So that's why they use the term colored people. No one probably never thought of that. NAACP was aware of the problem of mulattoes. They were aware that there were white-looking Negroes passing for white. And if you look at 99% of the revisionized black abolitionists, so-called black heroes, so-called black freedom fighters, if they were not a reverend, they were lily white niggers. W.E.B. Du Bois, Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, Carter G. Woodson, all of them were light-complected. And remember what I said. If you take a light-complected black today, put him on the football team with 53 football players, show you the picture, I guarantee you're going to say all 53 of them are white. But turn around and put two blackies on the team of 53 and take a picture. Now you're going to say there are 3 Negroes and 50 whites, because that color is going to show. Not most, mulattoes know that. That's why they want to stay away from black people, because their friends will notice, you look like him. They never notice as long as you stay out there in the suburb and be evil to black people. You be the most evil one of all against blacks, and you will pass all day, every day, any day. But as soon as one black gets in, you better try to move, because somebody going to look at y'all at the supermarket or in the gas station and say, you must have some black in you. And Lord have mercy, you've been trying to hide that all the time. Unbelievable. The first American colony to legalize slavery was Massachusetts in 1641, only 17 years after the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock. The slave trade became very profitable to the shipping colonies such as Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, as the brother would say, Connecticut, and New Hampshire. They financed many ships in the triangular trade scheme. What was that? England, Africa, and United States. Triangle. Golden Triangle, they used to call it when I was going to school. The morale argument against slavery arose early in the New England shipping colonies, but it could not withstand the profits of the trade and soon died out. The first legislation of slavery occurred in 1642 in the colony of Massachusetts. Many of the Puritans there argued that it was God's will that they bring the slaves to the colonies from Africa because the heinous conditions in which they were rescuing them, they were doing them a favor, bringing them in. There was no slave ships ever chartered from a southern port. The charters came from London, Seville, Lisbon, Boston, and New York. They didn't come from the southern ports, just to name a few. And this treaty called Assento Treaty of 1714 created a company for the prosecution of African slave trade. 25% of the stock went to King Philip of Spain. Queen Anne took 25% for herself, and the rest went to the nobility of England. They set up a treaty among this triangle. So, we can back out of that for a minute, because what I'm creating here is a multitude of nations of black folks. I don't think anyone, and maybe I'll do some research, the number of tribes in Africa is probably in the hundreds. It wouldn't surprise me at all, in the hundreds. Each one of those tribes have their own customs. Each one of those tribes have their own culture. Since the market was big on the coast of Africa, the coastal tribes would go inland and capture tribes of Africans and bring them to the coast. Yeah. Now, you may want to challenge me, because I tell you that the number of blacks that are in America today and any time in history did not come over here on ships. So when I talk to you like I'm talking to you now, we have to stay in the time frame of the activity. And the more I read of this time frame, especially when you bring in Spain and Portugal, who were two of the biggest slave traders in ancient history, early history, they did trips down Africa and crossed down in Brazil and lower in the warm waters, and then come back up the coast to get to the markets up in the Americas. And they even had said that it took 3 to 4 months in order to make a trip. So when you start adding up 3 or 4 months and then go to the record book of these shipping companies, and how many ships did they have in any given year? How many were slave ships in any given year? How many slaves could be packed on a ship in any given year? They even say that the survival slaves on one of the hugest ships, I think they even used the number 400. They said that most of the time they were lucky to get to arrive with half amount of slaves from their cargo. Half of their cargo would be what would show up. Now, we're talking about unity. And yes, we're going over. Oh, it's 5 o'clock. I thought it was late. Okay. That's good time. We got good time. So here we are. We're talking about unity. So I'm telling you that we need to know this kind of history so we know what we have to do today, 2015. Unity is a mechanism to get out of this madness, but we got to learn how to unify. We got to learn how to set up coalitions, or better yet, confederations. Okay? Engineer telling us we got time to take. We got to take our break, and we're trying to unite. Now, there are a couple of more things involved in unification, and it's very close to nationality, because you can have a nationality and still be treated like a piece of crap. And I've seen it with certain people, and I've seen it in the other direction, especially when I was in Africa. I visited Africa, and I met some, what they call them, Ashanti warriors, or Ashanti nationality. Wow. That's really, really, really something to see. Most of us are not ready to meet an Ashanti. I noticed when I was in Africa that I was in the city of Accra. And Accra is a huge port where everything for the country comes into Accra from around the world. by ship. And they come in on tankers, you know how it is, and they bring them in. Out of all the tribes there, you could notice that the Ashantis were feared by the other tribes. They kind of stayed out of the way. Very, very, very strange. And the reason that I know this, I met 3 Ashantis because I renewed my marital vows when I was there, and they had a African marital ceremony, and 3 Ashantis were in the ceremony. Excuse me. We had about roughly, I'm looking back on it, probably had about 20 people other than my wife and I who were getting married. They set up a real African marriage. It's really something to see. They had my wife had sisters that were there. That's how they got the people. 20 ladies were there. They had about 3 for her sisters. I had a brother or 2. It was real good. I don't want to go into it now, but it was a real educational affair, and I see why divorces are not as prevalent and as numerous over there on the continent. And I don't have statistics and data, but from the way they get married, they eliminate all problems that could arise in the future. That was the key. All promises had to be made and settled, all disagreements, all wishes. I know I had to pay my wife's sister since we were getting married, and my wife had promised her sister that she would send her to college in the United States, and they figured what it would cost. And in order for me to get my wife, I had to pay for her education. It was real interesting. But I'm talking about the Ashanti. They were very forthright, very aggressive. You would almost think that they were in a fighting mode every time, which they were not. But you had to get used to it because they talk loud, aggressive. I admired them for that. And they have never been defeated on the battlefield. That comes from them over there, not me. I guess I'm bringing up some points of interest. As you unite and become free, your nationality will come out of your nature of things. And I'm going back to explain to you the process of unity. But I'm talking now about the process of you uniting on an issue, creating a position on the issue, expressing the power that's in you in belief of the position. And believe me, I may sound crazy, but I may sound fundamental, but there are books written out there to enlighten those that are in power how to act. When you get in management and start your climb to upper management, it is imperative that you read certain books to prepare you for the position or the direction that you're going. I know a lot of you probably never even thought about that. One of the best books I read was Genghis Khan, Leadership by Genghis Khan. There's something very, very, very important in that book. One that all politicians read. All politicians that's going to be a politician. I don't care what he's going to be, dog catcher, elected, or president of the United States. Every one of them have read or know something about Right in my mouth. It's on the tip of my tongue, on the tip of my head, and it ain't coming out. Machiavelli, the prince. They all know about the prince. I wonder how many out there have read The Prince or don't know about it, The Prince. I'm looking in the chat room and I'm wondering, has anyone read or know anything about The Prince? It's Machiavelli. There's another book, or there's several books, but another one that I'm going to start promoting on my website is called Power, How to Get It and How to Use It. It's by a European named Michael Koda. Michael Koda, Korda. And if you go online today, I know you can get it for pennies. You need to have it in your books, in your library. I wanted to order 10, 20, but it was only like 3 cents. But they would only let me get one. So I'm telling you right now, you need to go online. Go on my website. I have a hookup with Amazon. And order through my website. It's called Power, Power, by Michael Koda, Korda. And they talk about how to get power and how to maintain power. The fastest way to succeed is to look as if you are playing by somebody else's rules while quietly playing by your own. Michael Koda was born in 1933, is a writer and novelist who was a longtime editor-in-chief of Simon and Schuster in New York. That's a big publishing company, huge publishing company. Okay? Act impeccably. Perform every act as if it were the only thing in the world that mattered. The fastest way to succeed is to look as if you're playing by someone else's rules while quietly playing by your own. Do I have a caller on the line? Sounds like it. Caller, you out there? Okay. If you hear me, put your phone on mute, because I can hear you. So put your phone on mute and we can go on from there. Okay. Now, I'll just pick a few. The biggest fool in the world is he who merely does his work supremely well without attending to appearance. Without attending to appearance, as quoted in quote unquote, it's a handbook. The biggest fool in the world is he who merely does his work supremely well without attending to appearance. In other words, he's looking like a bum, but he does a good job. He's got to be the biggest fool in the world. Wow. I'm just tapping at a couple of them that I'm looking at. Where we at here? Okay. Okay. How to get it, how to use it. Power. Learn to use time. Think of it as a friend, not as enemy. Don't waste it in going after things you don't want. Act impeccable. Woo. Perform every act as if it were the only thing in the world that mattered. Never reveal all of yourself to other people. Hold back something in reserve so that people are never quite sure if they really know you. Interesting. Learn to use time. Think of time as a friend, not as an enemy. Don't waste it in going after something you don't want. Learn to accept your mistakes. Don't be a perfectionist about everything. Don't make waves. Move smoothly without disturbing things. That's interesting. One way to keep momentum going is to have constant, greater goals. Always have a goal, constant goal, and make them greater. Luck can often mean simply taking advantage of a situation at the right moment. It is possible to make your luck by being always prepared. So when you see an opportunity and take advantage of it, let them call it luck, but you know what it is. You were prepared. The more you can dream, the more you can do. That's wonderful there, because the schools take dreaming out of the curriculum. Your chances of success are directly proportional to the degree of pleasure you derive from what you do. The chances of success are directly proportional to the degree of pleasure you derive from what you do. It's okay to be ambitious. It's okay to look out for number one. It's okay to be a winner. And it's always okay to be rich. Better read that again. That rattles all Christians. And it's always okay to be rich. A word of caution. People will tell you that success can't buy you happiness. This is true enough, but success is the next best thing to happiness. And if you can't be happy as a success, it's very unlikely that you will find a deeper, truer happiness in failure. So you always want to be happy and successful. Success on any major scale requires you to accept responsibility. You have to assume all problems, difficulties, and doubt of other people, and to reflect back your capacity for decision-making and action, and for enduring without visible signs of worry or panic. In the final analysis, the one quality that all successful people have, parentheses, and which is the most difficult one of all to learn or fake, is the ability to take on responsibilities. That's real. It is easy to be responsible for things you control and are sure of. But to be successful, you must make yourself responsible for the blunders of the people who work for you as well. Responsibility requires a highly developed ego and a good deal of courage. But it is ultimately the one test you cannot afford to fail. You must be willing to accept personal responsibility for the success of your assignments, for the action of the people who work for you, and for the goals you have accepted, or been given. Often, let me flip this out. I missed one here. 1 second. There we go. Often quoted is the form, success on any measure scale requires you to accept responsibility. In the final analysis, the one quality that all successful people have is the ability to take on responsibilities. One way to keep momentum going is to have constant infinitely great or greater goals. And luck, we talked about luck, often means simply taking advantage of a situation at the right moment. It is possible to make your luck by being always prepared. Remember, never walk away from failure. On the contrary, study it carefully and imaginatively for its hidden assets. Always look in the failure for success that you missed. The more you can dream, the more you can do. Wow. Your chances of success are directly proportionate to the degrees of pleasure you derive from what you do. You enjoy what you do, so you will be successful. If you are in a job you hate, face the fact squarely and get out. You may earn a good living, you may have a safe career, but you will never be a success. Find out what you enjoy doing, and your chances of succeeding will be dramatically better. We play the game every day, sometimes without even recognizing that we're doing it. We compete with other people or other teams or other companies, not only because it is essential to business survival, but because we frankly enjoy competition. It's fun to be in the game, and it's even more fun to win the game. The first step to success is to accept the consequences of knowing that you're right. When that is the case, when you know you're right and the case presents itself that you're right, you accept the consequences. It is not so much a matter of being assertive as of giving up the comfortable cocoon of apologies and guilt in which most of us have chosen to live. The freedom to fail is vital if you're going to succeed. The freedom to fail is vital if you're going to succeed. Most successful people fail from time to time, and it is a measure of their strength that failure merely propels them into some new attempt at success. Wow. All of this pertains to unifying, because you have to know who you are. You have to know if you are evaluating yourself on a true scale. You got to know if you're going to set up articles. These are one of the rules of unity and success. Set up articles that you can live with, then your unit can live with, which would be your family. And then go out and see if there are other persons who can live with the unity, better yet, with the articles. We need to create our own individual governments per person. This is where I'm going with this lecture or this presentation. We need to go back to Granny. I love saying that. We need to go back to the philosophy of Grandma, who ruled her family. And when it came time of a certain time of year, I recall, Granny and a couple more of her friends would all go and pick greens and different vegetables in somebody's field. Nobody said a word. They all went out. They got what they wanted, come back and traded among themselves and sorted out among themselves and went back to their individual governments, quote, state, quote, families. Harmony was always in the neighborhood when Granny's philosophy was in power. There was always harmony. In America, success has always been easy to measure. It is the distance between one's original and one's final achievement that matters. I don't know if I totally agree with that, but it sounds like it might work. In America, success has always been easy to measure. Success. It is the distance between one's origin and one's final achievement that matters. I'm going to give that some thought. Wow. Okay, American system demands success. Yes, it does. But where do we play a role in that success? These rules or these items that I'm reading today, of course, were written by a European from a European's perspective. But Malcolm said it very clear. If you wish to advance in this society, look and see how he is advancing, which will give you a roadmap on what you should do to advance. And it's strange that he would say American system demands success when the news media plays down the fact that blacks in America are negative, criminals, rapists, murderers, what have you. And they don't write it up as a complete blanket, but they infer that it's a complete blanket because they will describe the individual, which means that 1,000 others can fit the mold. Yes. But then there are those, as I mentioned earlier, about the PhD and the masters, who would fit the mold of success, but yet they're controlled by the system to make sure that they stay in the mold and not lean down and help their own people. I was shocked when I read, I didn't read it. I had one of Amos Wilson's DVDs, who was a black historian from Islam, Nation of Islam. Name was Amos Wilson. If you get an opportunity to listen to one of his tapes, you need to do it, or his DVD, you need to do it. When he said that the system had an unwritten law that all black historians, in order to be successful, demand success. In order to be successful in this society, they had codes set up, what they could and could not do. All of the history, which was the black history that they would write, all had to start. They could write about anything, but they always had to start in Africa and in the pyramids. And if you recall, very few of them I've yet to see, hear, or even hear about. I know I haven't read it. When they talk about us being here all the time, I haven't seen that yet. Lerone Bennett had the book that was a bestseller, Before Columbus. Yeah. But he had to start in Africa, and we came over. All of it. We've been here for thousands of years, we blacks. We've been here on earth thousands of years. And along comes a European who has a timetable of 6,000 years, and he knows more about us than we know about ourselves. How can that be? What the hell is that about? When we know that 80% of our history, our story, was oral. It was handed down through the ministers of education, ministers of communication, And then along came Joe, and he knows more about us than we know about ourselves. Well, the only way he could do that was to destroy or do away with all of our history, set up schools to make us not want to. Now, you know it takes a lot of study in the schools of psychology for an idiot to be an idiot and don't care if he's an idiot. That's a lot of work and a lot of knowledge. And when I say that, I'm talking about us as blacks, that not only are we slaves, we don't care that we're slaves and despise anyone that calls us a slave, like it's an honor to be a slave. And when he has you labeled, it ain't me. He has you labeled as a Negro, colored, black. And then under his breath, he calls you a nigger. And everybody know who he's talking about. And then you look at me when I use the word. You created the nigger, and then he labeled it. You created the ignorant one, and he labeled it nigger. And you're mad at me because I bring it up. I feel sorry for you. I don't know what else to say. Unless you can prove to me that I'm up the creek without a paddle. There's no way in hell for a nation of people to be on earth. I've been here 73 years. And so I can only talk about what I know, KNOW. I've never met anyone who's been to heaven. I've never seen anything positive as far as our nation coming out of the church. I've never seen an economic system. I take that back. Elijah Muhammad had an economic system that worked. It was worth a lot of money. He built his own system, and that should be explored because he should have had a trust. I'm not saying he didn't, but I don't really know. But there were a lot of money in the Nation of Islam in 1975 when Elijah, the messenger, passed. And I'm talking about billions. I ain't talking about 2,000 or 3,000. All that old crap. There was a whole lot of money. I also know that he was taught by one of the best teachers of our time, a brother named Timothy Drew, better known as Noble Drew Ali. All of those heavyweights studied under or with Noble Drew Ali. And Noble Drew Ali is just now coming out because we're seeing that there were a lot of books written about this brother. When I started searching for him, I couldn't find nothing. I finally got a hold of, and I'm talking about 1970s, when I first heard about Noble Drew Ali. I couldn't find any books in the library, and I will admit I didn't have the knowledge to study and research the way I do now, and there was no internet. But you can go online right now, and it would shock you, the information that comes up. True and false or misinformation about Noble Drew Ali. We got a lot of work to do. And what bothers me, and this is what a lot of people get angry with me, because I very seldom believe in anything that I see or hear unless it can be proven, which brings on a whole new factor, and that is I challenge everything that I see and hear. So that makes everything from most people's perspective that I don't believe in nothing. I don't believe in nobody. But that's wrong. I believe in myself, and when I see and hear proof that something exists that I need to know, I will eat it up quicker than you can say tomcat or whatever you want to run. It's simple for me. Because a lot of things that are out there were not for real. I don't give a damn what they say. And I'm not going to start labeling things. I can tell you a lot of things that I've learned that I don't really believe. And I'm searching every day to try and find proof that it really existed. But basically, I can't find it or haven't found it yet. So why would I want to believe that? I found information about the 3 badges. I researched it, and I found it in another area about the 3 badges. And I found out what the 3 badges were about. And next week, on Saturday, I'm going to deal with the 3 badges. So before we go off today, I got time. Look like I won't have time. But those that are listening by telephone, I believe can continuously listen. I'm not sure. But you can continuously listen. But on the 7th of February, I'm doing a lecture at Truth Bookstore in the Northland Mall. And with that, I'm inviting you and yours to come and listen to the lie and correct it, because I'm going to give you the truth. And if you don't start on the true foundation, you will never, ever, ever be free, nor can you unite, because everybody's base is conveniently set up for them, what they want to believe in, but they can't prove it. I'm going to prove and bring proof and pass out proof of what I said. Some of the things that I'm going to say, you never looked at it from the real. And I'll ask you to email me, because I'm going to leave you with a question as I go out. The what they call it, the laws, the scales of justice, has this female with a blindfold on holding a book. And the scales of justice are supposed to be the Europeans' answer to Ma'at. I want to ask you, and you can do research to find out, are those scales balanced or are they at an angle? And you need to go downtown to your courtrooms and just take a quick look and see. Are the scales balanced or are they at an angle? And I'll bring that up next week when we start the program. So until next week, I appreciate everyone that dialed in. I hope you will email me at Ron March. There you go. The leadership secrets of Genghis Khan. There you go. I've got a listener that knocked it out. The leadership secrets. Those books were written and used. There's another big book that's being used by your black politicians. And I'm going to bring that book next week. I have 2 copies of it. I think it's part 1 and part 2, but I got them both. I'm going to bring that because the book has captured the black imperative, and it's called The Negro Question, The Destiny of the Negro. I'm going to bring it next week. I can't remember the title of it, but it's a big book. I've read some of it. I've read excerpts from it, and I've heard people talk about it. And it's a real good book. The guy that wrote it was tricked by society, United States. And by being tricked, he was so upset what they did with the book because they took it off the market because they didn't want anyone to know that they have done research on us. Why would they do research on us? To know how to handle us and trick this Swedish financier. He was a economic major. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in economics. And they commissioned him to write this book, to do research. It took him about 3 to 4 years to put it together. But he did, brought it to him. They bought all the rights to him, paid him off, and told him to get out of town by sundown. And then they used the book against us. And every time they get a good nigger in the White House, such as Obama and some of those other elected congressmen, they turn them on to the book to know how to get reelected and trick the black folks into keep voting for them. I'm going to bring that next week. That would be very interesting. Okay, until next week, I'm out of here. So let it, let me see if I can make it play out a bit.